The next workshop we're going to be working on is going to be Makeover Your Emotional Intelligence. It's going to be done by Amy Farrell. She's been teaching at SEC for the last 6 years. A little background, she has a BS in Organizational Communications from EWU. She has an MA in Communication and Leadership Studies from GU and a doctoral studies in leadership from Gonzaga also. She's also one of our advisors from Speak Out along with Linda. Both of them help us put on this great conference and work together to get Kyle Maynard, who was our first keynote speaker, and I'd like you all to give her a warm welcome.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited to see all of you. One of the things that I don't know if you've been at any of the other hours today, but this is a student-led conference, and this is actually put on by both Speak Out and a business and professional communication class. So they did all the decorations and did all the setup, and we're just really, really proud of all the hard work that both Speak Out and the business and professional class have done to make this happen. Kyle Maynard, great speaker, huh? Did everybody get a chance to see him? Yeah, so I get to be the one that goes after him, right? Yeah, I'm really stoked about that. We're going to talk about, the whole conference theme is about Extreme Makeover Communication Edition. So one of the components of communication that is a really important piece that people oftentimes don't know much about, which is called emotional intelligence. So we're going to talk about that today. And it's going to improve your relationships with other people. So you'll totally get your money's worth for coming today, even though it was free. So we're going to talk about what is emotional intelligence, why is it important, where do we start, and how can we improve. So these concepts are simplistic, and hopefully I can explain it in a way that will make sense to you so you can leave today with something that you can do to impact and change your life in a positive way. So emotional intelligence is your ability to recognize and understand emotions that are in yourself and in other people. Raise your hand if you've heard of the term IQ. So intellectual quotient. So that is kind of your base intelligence level, and that's something that stays the same throughout your entire life. Emotional intelligence is the non-book fact-related component to intelligence. So this is the other half of things. This is your ability to interact with people in appropriate, positive ways. And this is a range scale, just like in your intellectual quotient, just like your IQ. Your EQ is, there's a wide variety. So you're going to have people that are very emotionally intelligent. They interact with people. They recognize emotions. They understand emotions very well. They pick up on that easily. And you're going to have people that don't. And you've probably encountered both people. The people that you tend to want to go to talk to when you're having a hard day, they likely have some emotional intelligence and you're drawn to that. The people that will say highly inappropriate things at any moment, they likely don't have very much emotional intelligence. And the wonderful thing is, you're somewhere on the spectrum, everyone is. The wonderful thing is that you can improve that. So even if you're the one that struggles with that, you can make changes today to start that process to become better. So you have this portion of things. You also have the ability to use those skills and awareness. So the first piece is you're becoming aware, and the second piece is using that awareness to manage your behavior and the relationships that you have in your life. So you're taking that knowledge and then utilizing that knowledge in an action, hands-on way. And that might be dealing with social components, making decisions that lead to positive results. Those are all things that come into play when we're dealing with emotional intelligence. So that's kind of the what is emotional intelligence, and I'm going to talk about, why is it important. The focus on the first section of this is being able to understand and recognize emotions in yourselves and others. And that seems like that would be fairly common sense. And unfortunately, it's not always for everybody. So I'm going to kind of give you the basics. there are a couple of key emotions that we deal with in life, and there's a huge spectrum of them, but they break down into these major components. So you have happiness, sad, angry, afraid, and ashamed. And every other emotion that you can think of is a product or extension of one of these core emotions. So the reality is, when we're recognizing the emotions in ourselves and others, we really only have to break it down to one of 5 emotions, which helps to take a little bit of the pressure off, because you're like, well, there's so many emotions out there, how can I decide which one it is? Well, you just need to figure out which one of these 5 it is, because everything else is an extension of one of these. And we'll talk about that. We have levels of emotions, and there's a severity. So if you think about the difference between, if we're talking about happiness as being our core emotion, there's a big difference between being pleased and being elated, right? So maybe if it's a scale of 1 to 10, pleased is like a 1 or a 2, and elated is like a 10. They're both happiness, but they're just different on the spectrum. They're just different severities or strengths of that emotion. And so when you're looking at somebody and you're trying to pick up on their emotions and looking at yourself and trying to assess your own emotions, you're essentially analyzing where on that scale is it and what emotion category does that fit into. So pleased versus elated. Unhappy is quite a bit different than agonized. Have you ever seen somebody agonized? If you said, oh, you're just unhappy about that, they might have words with you. They'd be like, unhappiness doesn't quite describe what I'm feeling right now. You know, you lost somebody in your life that was important to you. That might be on the agonized side versus, I didn't get the grade that I wanted on this assignment. It's completely different on the spectrum. Annoyed versus enraged. When you're in class and somebody is tapping their pen on the desk over and over again, annoyed. Enraged is something completely different. And if, you know, part of this is self-awareness and figuring out about your own self, if you get to the place where you're enraged by somebody tapping their pen on a desk, then that's the process that now you know, and then you can start to make changes to adjust those emotions, because enraged shouldn't come from something that's smaller. So that's part of the process, is just becoming aware of that. Nervous versus horrified. I'm nervous standing up here in front of you, I'm not gonna lie. I teach communication, so nervous, that makes sense. You know, public speaking is one of the biggest fears for people. Horrified? No. If I was standing on top of a very high mountain looking down over a cliff, horrified might be a better solution. I got a huge fear of heights, so horrified would be more appropriate in that moment. Or somebody's holding a gun at me, you know what I mean? It's a completely different on the spectrum. So when you're analyzing emotions, regretful versus dishonor, these are all different components to this on the scale. So you're taking all of these different areas and narrowing them down to those key 5 emotions. Nonverbal communication may be a word that you've heard, and Kyle mentioned it in his keynote presentation. Nonverbal communication is essentially everything that you're communicating without actually using words. We're communicating constantly, and the messages that are being sent between a sender and a receiver are not only a verbal message, but a nonverbal message. Do you remember growing up and your mom gave you the look? She didn't have to say anything for you to know that you had done something wrong. She sent you a message with a look. That's a nonverbal communication. I use it frequently. I have 3 kids, and you know, I give them the mom look, the stare, the evil eye, you know, whatever it is that you call it at your house. But being able to pick up on nonverbal communication is an important part of having emotional intelligence, because you're picking up on emotions. The mom look might be irritation. So I'm picking up on irritation by noticing that look, and that means something to me. So if I'm able to pick up on that emotion, then I have some emotional intelligence, and that's part of the skill set. If somebody is visibly, obviously annoyed and you're completely clueless, that's where you can see that this is an area that you need to grow in, is learning about nonverbal communication. So I'm going to give you just the briefest synopsis ever, and if you get a chance to take interpersonal communication, that's a fantastic class, and you'll get more in-depth on all of this. But so it's any communication that's transferred in a non-linguistic mean. You're going to include posture, eye contact, facial expressions, tone. These are all things that send a message. You might have a verbal message like sorry. If you're apologizing to somebody and you say sorry, what's the difference between oh, sorry versus sorry? The tone. Yeah, the tone separates the message and gives it completely different meaning. So when you are dealing with people's emotions, you kind of have to take it a step farther than what is it that they're saying. And then you have to read them. So I'm sure you've had lots of experiences where you've met somebody and or you see somebody that you know even and you ask them how they're doing and they say, oh, I'm fine. What does that mean? Oftentimes not fine. And the way that you can tell the difference is how do they look? How do they sound? What does that fine sound like? If they say, oh yeah, I'm fine, then their tone might be like, oh, okay, you know, maybe, sure. If it's like, yeah, I'm fine, the tone of it is different. It changes the meaning of the message. And if you can pick up on that, then that's the emotional intelligence component that will help you to have better relationships. And I see that in students all the time. I'll be walking down the hall and you can see somebody that is visibly not okay. And at that point, it's like this little spidey sense that goes off. It's like, uh-oh, something's wrong here. And then I can step aside and say, you know, what's going on? Oh, I'm good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe you. Now, what's going on? So picking up on these pieces is really an important component in having relationships with other people. Because if you missed out on all of the I'm fines in your day that you encounter, when you could be reaching out to people that aren't fine and they just don't know how to tell you, that those are missed opportunities for really helping people. And also understanding when we're the person that's saying I'm fine, that we're missing out on opportunities for somebody to be a blessing to us and listen to us and, you know, be a part of our story because we're not open with what's really going on. So, you know, there's a lot to it, but the first piece is being able to recognize it. Hand gestures is another nonverbal component. When we can start to recognize what nonverbals go with what emotions, it's easier to pick out what emotions people are feeling. So you might think in this, she's got her arms up, she's pumped, you know, she's excited. That's a good emotion. You can tell that by looking at her. And in the previous picture where you saw the gentleman that was very angry and he's pointing and his, you know, his eyebrows are close together and he's obviously red in the face, you know, you're picking up on anger in that picture. So essentially it's starting to analyze what are the different emotions that people are feeling based on how they look. So in my class, I take a look at some pictures. So this is another example of an angry face. You can tell by her eyes, you can tell by her body language, which is her hand reaching out and the finger pointing, her lips are pursed. You don't want to be on the other end of this lady's conversation. What did you do? She's mad. So you're picking up just based on looking at her. She doesn't have to say anything in order for you to pick up on that emotion. And she's feeling a highly severe sense of anger. So the stronger the sense, the easier it is probably going to be to pick it up. So then it's kind of figuring out what are some of the smaller components. What about this one? I'm pregnant. So in that circumstance, you know, his eyes changed. I don't know what this poor man has just heard, but he is freaked out. And you can see it. So this goes beyond him telling you, I'm freaked out right now. This is, you're picking up on it based on what you see. His tone, he probably just went up like 5 octaves in his tone. What about this girl? Sad. If you see this face on somebody and they say they're fine, there's something wrong. It doesn't match up. So then it's your responsibility when you have that spidey sense go off, or that inner voice saying, uh-oh, something's wrong here. That's when you take a chance to stop and talk to somebody and find out what's going on and be a part of their life and listen. But the nonverbal, her eyebrows are together. She, you know, her eyes look glossy, like maybe she's going to cry. She's obviously disheveled appearance. So there's something going on there, and being able to pick up on that is part of this emotional intelligence process. This girl is happy though. Her eyes are kind of sparkling. She's smiling, obviously. You know, so when you're seeing these emotions and the variety of this on the spectrum, the scale, how happy are they? How sad are they? How angry are they? That you're able to, the more sensitive you are to that, then you likely have a higher emotional intelligence. And these two are in love. They're leaning towards each other. They're touching each other. They're looking at each other. So when you're seeing somebody in school and they have this look on their face, you know it without actually having to go up and talk to them, that they have emotions for each other, feelings for each other. That's you using your emotional intelligence by picking up on and sensing the emotions of other people. So that's a big piece of this. She's the other end. I'm pregnant. The other guy's like, ugh. She's so excited. Something very, very positive. So we get to the emotional intelligence piece of, okay, so we're picking up on these emotions, and that's definitely one component of this. The second component is, what do we do with it now that we know what the person's emotion is? So in this circumstance, if she looks like this and she's super excited, and she comes to me and she's telling me something that she's really excited about, what do you think that my facial expression should look like? Something similar to that. We call that mirroring, where you are mimicking the emotions of other people that you're encountering. And part of that is not necessarily to be fake, but you want to be on the same level that they're at. Because if she came to you with this face and you gave her the other guy's face, she would probably be very let down that you weren't as excited as she was. So that's something to keep in mind. What about this guy? Smug. That was my first word too. Cocky. Arrogant, yeah. So in that circumstance, you're picking it up, you're realizing what that is, and then at that point, it changes how you interact with somebody. That's where you get the other half of the emotional intelligence. Maybe you're really good at picking up on people's emotions and their feelings, but maybe the piece that you need to work on is, then what? Now that I know that you're smug, now what do I do? How do I modify my behavior so that I can interact with you in a positive way? And that's where we'll get into some of that in just a second. So we talked about it's your ability to recognize and understand emotions in yourself and others. Now the second piece is using that awareness to manage your behavior and your relationships. So it's a modifying process, and this is an active process. This is something that takes work on your behalf, but it really is worth it in the long run, and I'll tell you why emotional intelligence is important. So you're making decisions, navigating the social complexities of life. This is your day-to-day interactions that you're going to have regardless, but if you have this emotional intelligence, you can make those relationships better. Managing behavior. Our brains are wired for emotion. So naturally, we are dealing with the heightened sense of emotion, and that's why things stick out to us. Whether it's those, anger, fear, those emotions that we feel, that's a part of us that is a natural part of our brain that we can't control. We're naturally going to feel something in every circumstance. What we do have control over is the thoughts that follow. So you can feel fear. So I'm standing up here, you know, a room full of people. I can feel fear. I could get stuck in fear. It would be easy to get stuck in that fear and anxiety, but the reality is I have control over what do I do next. So my choice is to not get stuck in that fear. I'm going to say, okay, now it's time to talk. Now I'm going to do my job. Now I'm going to share with you what I know so that you can leave, and hopefully the next time you feel fear, you'll be able to do that same thing. And the understanding that we do have some control over our reaction to the emotion is actually freeing to me, because you don't feel like I'm a victim of fear, because I have control over how do I react to that fear. According to research, 36% of people tested are accurately able to identify their emotions as they happen. So we don't often know what we're feeling, and you may have had those moments in your life where somebody's like, how are you doing? You're like, your guess is as good as mine. You don't know. Maybe it's a mixture. Maybe you're feeling more than one thing. So you're not alone if you feel muddled in that sense of trying to analyze where are you at. This is something that lots of people have to deal with. And in the managing relationships component, you're taking your awareness and modifying your behavior in order to fit in certain circumstances. So if I have a student that's struggling, I'm going to change my behavior in order to be with them at their level. Because if I disregard the fact that they're struggling, what's going to happen? They're going to continue to struggle. I'm going to lose them. And do you think they're going to come to me next time that they have a problem? And that defeats my ultimate goal of being here. So I have to adapt my behavior in certain circumstances in order to meet the needs of the people that I'm with. Basing that on what are their emotions? What's the circumstance? What are their emotions? And my awareness of their emotions is what the initial step is. So once I'm aware of that, then I can use that to manage the relationship that I have with them, which will in turn better those relationships. So we talked about what is emotional intelligence. We're going to talk about why is it important. It improves your relationships. You know, if we talk about me being a teacher, my student comes to me, they're having a problem, and if I can't either make a time to listen to them and make a time to meet with them, to discuss what's going on for them, if I can't do that, then the chances of them coming to me with another issue that they have is slim. So I need to, if I'm trying to improve relationships with people, is to meet them where they're at, but also to make the sacrifices and make the time in order to work on those relationships, whether it's a teacher-student relationship, whether it's a significant other relationship, that doing this is important because it improves those relationships. I have 3 kids, and so, you know, I'm constantly doing this with my own children because I want to have strong relationships with them. I love them. So if people are important to you, you'll do that. It gives you an edge at work. I know that you know, if I use myself as another example of being a teacher, that my success in the classroom is very dependent on me being able to pick up on how people are doing. If people are bored in my class, then I need to do something different. But I need to be able to pick up on the fact that they're bored, right? Otherwise, I just keep talking. So, improving work success. You can manage stress, you're more accountable, you make better decisions, you can communicate better. These are all the benefits of improving your emotional intelligence in the work environment. You can be more flexible. Raise your hand if you think that you're a very flexible person. Yeah, so that's like 15% of you. So flexibility, that might be something that you could strive to be better at, and having more emotional intelligence will improve your ability to do that. Managing time. Students, we have, our population at the school is, so many of you have families, so many of you have jobs and school. Managing time is really, really tough. You add on homework on top of that. It's really stressful, but having some of these skills will help you to manage your time better because you're not getting stuck in that stress emotion, right? If we're talking about emotions and getting stuck there, we can feel stress, but then what? Then what do? Do we go get more resources? Do we manage our time better? Those are the choices that we have control over. Research shows that the higher the EQ, the higher the salary. As a teacher, I'm not sure that this is necessarily applicable. Maybe not in our environment specifically, but on a wide spectrum, this is probably very accurate. People that are high executives, people that have, really strong businesses, successful business people have good emotional intelligence because they have to deal with people all the time. They have to know people, and they make a lot of money. So they probably jack up this statistic a little bit, but it's something to strive for. So if nothing else, it's something to go for. So we talked about what is it, we talked about why is it important. Now where do we start? There are tests online that will test your emotional intelligence, and there's tons of different formats for it. There isn't necessarily one right way to go, but I think that if you are interested in taking this the next step, go online and do a search for emotional intelligence assessments, and lots of them you can just click online and it will give you kind of a basic score. But keep in mind a few things, that because there are different types, they're not always going to be exactly the same. And your results can vary depending on your mood. If you're having a bad day, that's going to influence the results, so you might want to either take a few of them at different times, or at least keep that in mind, keep a grain of salt, so to speak, when you're thinking about the results of it. If you're wanting to work on this, I encourage you to do the training at the beginning. Take the assessment at the beginning, and then start to do some of these things and put into practice some of these ideas, and then take the test again after a while and see the improvement. And you'll see it in your relationships anyways. You won't need a test to tell you that you're getting better at it, but sometimes it's nice to have a number if you're a number person. But having a starting place, it's like you're going on a diet and you're going to start with your starting weight. Then you can look at the progress that you've made in a very concrete way of, look at this improvement, and it's making the work that I'm doing worth it because I'm seeing the differences. There are a couple different things that when you get a score that they'll likely talk about, so I'm going to talk about a few of those. Components of emotional intelligence, one is self-awareness, and I'll talk about each of these individually, so I'm just giving you the kind of preview. Self-awareness, having an understanding of ourselves. Self-management, so that's managing ourselves. Internal motivation. Can anybody use a dose of internal motivation? Yeah, absolutely. Empathy. Empathy is being our ability to feel what other people are feeling. So taking it a step beyond sympathy and putting ourselves in other people's shoes and actually having a connection with them. And then relationship management, which is maybe the ultimate goal, at least from my perspective, is improving those relationships that I have with people, whether it's professional or personal. So how can we improve? And I'm going to talk about these different components of emotional intelligence and working on building those skills. So the first one, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. So self-awareness is, again, how can we improve our skills of understanding ourselves better? Because if we understand ourselves better, it's easier for us to make changes. If I know when I'm stressed that I can't listen effectively, then I'm not going to try to listen while I'm stressed. Oh, that's pretty cool, huh? So having that awareness and making those changes is a self-management component. So I'm going to modify my own behavior, my own choices to meet the needs of other people in those relationships. Social awareness, understanding when you're in social settings, and then relationship management, which is modifying behavior for those relationships that you're in. So I'll give you some tips for these. The self-awareness, you're perceiving your own emotions in the moment and understanding your own inclinations. I am not a morning person. Just going to say that right out of the gate. Not a morning person. So I understand that my patience level in the morning is not what you would say, okay, I suck at it. I'm not a very patient person in the morning. So that's my inclination. Having awareness about that and saying, okay, this is an area that I need to work on, that's a first starting place. If I didn't know that, it would be really hard for me to make changes. But having, self-awareness, understanding my own areas of growth, my own emotions, and what impacts them. It does take reflection, and not everybody's comfortable with reflection. But I think that in this circumstance where you're actually, again, like Kyle Maynard was saying about why am I doing this, you're going back to the reason why you're doing this. So if my reason is to do better at work, if my reason is to improve my relationships, then it's important enough for me to make some of these changes and do some of the reflection that it's going to take in order to make this happen. So thinking and figuring out what they are, journaling might be a way to do that. I oftentimes will ask people that I'm close to, that I trust. If I have people I interact with frequently, and I can say, what do you see as some areas that I could work on? And getting some perspective from somebody that I trust. And understanding not only how do I feel, but how am I perceived? Because I'm an introvert. Introverts oftentimes feel internally. We don't necessarily express it. So I could feel happy on the inside, but my face does not get the memo. And so I might look like I don't really care, but I had to get some feedback about that of, are you having fun? It's like, yeah, I'm having fun. Can't you tell? No. Oh. So that was important for me because I don't want people in my life to think I'm not having fun with them. So then I had to almost like do a mental brain game of letting go of my facial muscles and just letting them go with whatever it is I'm actually feeling so that it's consistent with what you perceive and how I feel. So that was something I had to learn how to do. Developing and understanding what makes me tick. So what is it that motivates me? What is it that is my goal? Why am I doing this? Why is it important? And if we talk about no excuses, then if I have a why, what excuse could be more important or valid than that why? If my goal is to improve relationships with my kids, for instance, what could be more important than that? What excuse would be relevant enough to justify not doing this? Too much work. Too much work over your kids? I mean, you have things to do, for sure. But I could easily let that get in the way of what I'm doing, or I can prioritize and say, this is important. Because, again, if you saw Kyle's thing, he's talking about you put the oxygen mask on yourself, and then you put the oxygen mask on your other in the airplane situation, that me working on the core of me will help me to get the things done that I need to do. I'll be more productive. My time will be managed better if my relationships are intact. So self-awareness is one of the things to work on. People with high self-awareness are clear in their understanding of their strengths and weaknesses. So I can tell you, because I have some self-awareness, what are the things that I've learned, what am I working on? Nonverbal communication is one of them. But I didn't know that until I asked, until I got feedback for that. understanding what motivates me, being clear on that. What triggers my emotional responses. Again, if I have my daughter has sock issues. She's 7. She doesn't like the seams. Okay, so in the morning, the first thing, she's crying about socks, and I'm just like, really? In the grand scheme of things, this is what we've got to start our day with. So I was able to set up a system with her of, let Mom wake up. Mom will help you with your socks. We learned to turn them inside out. It's genius. Give Mom a second to wake up, and then we can deal with socks. Perfect. Worked better for her, worked better for me. We made a compromise to this system. Both our needs are met at that point, and all it took was an adjustment. Because I had self-awareness of knowing that waking up to crying was not going to start my day out in a positive way. Especially crying over socks, come on. This is a quote from a work situation. During challenges with difficult employees, Maria is very aware of her tone and makes an effort to keep the conversation appropriate. People here trust her. So you can see how this in a work environment is going to benefit you, because you are now a trustworthy person if you can portray yourself to be that way. And that comes from that self-awareness. Improving self-awareness. Accept your feelings as they are. You don't necessarily have to put them on a scale of whether they're right or wrong, good or bad. They just are. So if it's, I'm feeling fear. Fear doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have to be good. It just is. That's where I'm at, fear. So when you get stuck in this is a bad thing or this is a good thing, then you don't get through that thing. You're focusing on the emotion itself, and that's where we get stuck into that emotion versus, okay, I'm feeling fear. Now what? You're in your class. You're heading to midterms. You've got tests. I'm feeling fear. Now what? If you got stuck in, I'm feeling fear, I'm so stressed out. I'm so stressed out. I can't even tell you how many times I hear that from my students. I'm so stressed out. I'm like, okay, you're feeling stressed. Now what? Are you going to stay in stress mode? Because that's not very productive. Is I'm so stressed out going to help me study for my test? No, you have to get through the stress and get to the studying. Acknowledging that your emotions have a ripple effect on not only the people around you, but you know it's so controlling. Our emotions can be so controlling. Knowing who and what pushes your buttons, understanding that we have triggers for our emotions, and understanding what those are and having awareness about that is something that you can work on through that self-reflection and try to modify your behavior. Check yourself. Another tip. How you look, your clothes, demeanor, nonverbal tells a lot about how you're feeling. So I see on Pinterest, I'm kind of a Pinterest person, all these quotes about, you know, you're having a bad day, put on your lipstick and your high heels and put on a smile. And sometimes making those choices will get you through that emotion, and then you almost forget that you were having a hard day. So you're doing something. Something is better than nothing. You could get stuck in, I'm having this horrible day. Now what? Now what are you going to do? And seek feedback, getting understanding of how do other people perceive you. In my class, in my interpersonal class, we do a self-concept assignment, and that helps us to get feedback from other people about how do they perceive us. So we talked about self-awareness, self-management. This is where I'm talking about the brain and how this works. So you have thoughts that come in, and they are going through a feeling center and then going to the thinking center. Okay, so this is a natural process. We're always going to feel first. That's our natural instinct. What happens is, how long do we stay in this feeling center, and can we get past that into the thinking center? Because when we get to the thinking place, then we can actually be productive. If we get stuck in the feeling, that's where we're going to end up coming into trouble. So being able to manage our emotional reactions to people and situations is self-management, and passing through the emotions to the thinking center, getting through those emotions, managing our own emotions and realizing, if nothing else, I cannot stay here. I'm going to feel it, it's not good or bad, but I can't stay here, I've got to do something. So some tips for that. Counting to 10. It sounds so elementary, but the reality is that taking maybe 10 seconds of focus will help you to get through an emotion. Talking about self-talk, how do you talk to yourself? Speaking to somebody who is not emotionally involved in the situation. Getting feedback from somebody who's not in the center of it. You know, the quote of, I can't see the forest when I'm in the midst of the trees. Find somebody who's on the outside of the forest that can help you find your way out. On campus, maybe that's a counselor. We have great resources here that lots of people don't know about. Taking learning lessons from people that you meet. Using that as role models. Take care of yourself. I can't manage myself appropriately if I'm not getting enough sleep. I can't manage myself appropriately if I'm making bad choices in regards to my health. So taking care of yourself is an important piece of being able to manage yourself and your emotions. So we talked about self-awareness, self-management. Now we're going to talk about social awareness. This is your ability to pick up on others' emotions and understand what's really going on in them. And this plays into that empathy piece, is you're picking up on it and even putting yourself in their shoes and trying to see where they're coming from their perspective. It involves listening and observation. So you're looking at the nonverbals, but you're taking it a step farther and actually listening to what it is that they have to say, because you can't really understand unless you listen. And as a side plug note, I do teach an effective listening class, so if you get a chance to take that, love to have you. So those are important things for the social awareness piece. Some tips: greet people by their names. It's amazing. We do student interviews in class, so all the students get to know each other. When you see students come in after they've met everybody, they're so much less anxious about coming into a classroom environment, that greeting people by their names makes them feel more welcome, and it reduces that anxiety right away. Watch that nonverbal communication. Sometimes you have to plan ahead for social gatherings. I am an introvert, like I said, so sometimes I have to think, okay, what are 5 things that I could say to somebody else when I meet them? And it sounds kind of cliche to pre-plan a conversation, but if I have some questions that are go-to questions, then I'm not feeling stuck like fear, meeting somebody new. Fear, 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 I'm scared. I can go through, I'm scared to, look, I've got some questions that I could ask you because I've pre-planned this out. I'm a genius. Put yourself in their shoes, understanding everybody is in a different place. Clarifying and perception checking means, you look like you're feeling like this. Is that accurate? Or, I'm sensing this about you. Is that how you're feeling? Making sure that what you're sensing is actually correct. Because you could pick up on people's emotions. Sometimes it's going to be wrong. Sometimes you're going to get it wrong. And that's okay. That's a learning process. You can ask them, you look irritated right now. Did I do something? So the last piece is relationship management. Ability to use this awareness and the understanding of emotions of others to manage your interactions. So now that I'm understanding that you're stressed, I'm picking that up from you, now what do I do? How do I manage that relationship? Using clear communication, sometimes conflict management skills. Great conflict management class at SCC, Communication Studies Department. Using that to build bonds with other people. If life is about relationships, or we're constantly interacting with other people, then it's vitally important for us to get these skills in order to manage those relationships effectively. I can't think of very many people in our world that are so socially isolated that they don't encounter anybody. And if I knew about them, then they probably would have encountered somebody in order for me to know about them, so they probably don't count anymore anyways. But this is important. So some skills. Build trust. People will want to be in relationships with you, whether it's personal or professional, if they trust you. So do things that build trust. Do the things you say you're going to do. Be the people you say you are. That will build those relationships. Acknowledge the other person's feelings. You don't have to agree with what they feel, but they're feeling it. I understand you're feeling sad right now. Even if I don't agree with that, I understand that's how you're feeling. I can acknowledge that. Improve your communication skills. And you're here at a communication conference, so you're already a step ahead most people. Take classes. Come see me. Improve those skills, and that will help improve your relationships. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Make your feedback direct and constructive. So you're managing these relationships. You're going to have to give feedback to people. Do it in a way that's constructive. Give them something that they, I like to talk about sandwiching feedback. So I'm going to say something nice, I'm going to say something you would work on, and then I'm going to say something nice again. I'm still giving you something that you could work on, but I'm giving it in a way that does not feel overwhelming to you. So gosh, I so appreciate you coming to class, you're here all the time. If you came on time, that would be awesome because we could get started right away, but I love your participation. See where I snuck in that feedback? You're here every day, you're late every day. If you got here on time, that'd be helpful. Boy, I love how you participate. You snuck it in there, but it doesn't feel overwhelmingly negative. When you care, show it. And this can be little things too. Smiling is an amazing way to show that you care about somebody, and it's free, and it's easy. I learned how to do it. You could learn how to do it. Babies do it. So doing things, saying thank you, doing those things that are nice to people, showing people that you care about them. I just really appreciate you coming here. I hope you can leave with a few tips that will be beneficial to you and your emotional intelligence, improving your relationships. Would love to see you again sometime. Have a great rest of your day. There's another workshop here. Thank you.